Good morning and welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason here on this Monday. Can you believe it? January's almost over, the 30th day. One more day, and already 1/12 of the year will already be behind us. 800-951-0592 and the website at allamericangold.com. And yesterday they had the big football games on, right? The winners going to the Super Bowl, and the Chiefs get in, kind of, a penalty at the end of the game, which you always hate seeing, right? Rather have them win it, in better fashion than a penalty, put them in field goal range. But how about the game before that, the Niner-Eagle game? The Niners quarterback, really early in the game, hurts his elbow. They go to the backup. He gets a concussion. They got to go back to the starter who can't even throw the ball. I mean, it was absolute. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. But you know what? We've got my son Joey with us. And I know, Jason, I bring this up because a lot of people feel like the San Francisco 49ers, when it comes to investing in Wall Street, they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't throw the ball. I can't play in this game. But this is why we have Joey with us. He's usually here with us every Monday. But with the holidays and our new YouTube thing, Jason, this is the first time we've had him since we've gone to the new YouTube video.
Yeah, we're gonna see how it works out. We're always working on getting this and the next show. They have to become. We're trying to get more of this stuff broadcast, get more material out there for people to watch and listen to. So we're just it just things weren't working out, right, Joe? So we're working. We'll see if this one works, right?
Well, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen here. We think it's going to be okay. If somehow the YouTube video is shorter, that'll be why we couldn't figure out how to get Joey's with us. Joey, are you there? Hey, good. Always good to have you. And again, we don't want our listeners to feel like Brock Purdy and not be able to play with the big boys in Wall Street. But that's where you come in. You got 401ks, IRAs. You're the guy they need to be talking to. All right, Joey, we'll see you soon. That's my son, Joey, over at Northwestern Mutual. And Jason, really crucial to have somebody like that because they were going to save you a ton of losses last year. And this year, Joey's already talking about, listen, there's going to be probably two different strategies that need to be deployed. The strategy while the Fed wraps up the rate hiking cycle, and then that strategy towards the end of the year, if that recession comes and all of a sudden the Fed's got to go the other way again.
That's exactly right, Joe. Exactly. There's so many things to be aware of what's going on that it's hard for any one person to do it by themselves, especially if you're working 9 to 5 or even more, trying to hold your own finances together and trying to make a comfortable way to the years where you can't work. Because I'm one of those guys, Joe. I don't even know what retirement is. I don't really get the whole concept of it. I like the idea of working where I want to work. You know what I mean, Joe? I think you should always be busy doing something. So I don't think I'll ever stop working, but I'd like to always put myself in a position to do what I want to do and work whatever I want to do to earn money. But still, even if someone works all the way to the end, Joe, you want your money taken care of all the way to the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, all this crazy stuff happens. I feel the same way Jason feels, but 10 years from now, 15 years from now, maybe you feel differently. And for a lot of people, Jason, that's not even a choice whether they feel differently or not. Your employer may feel differently. We all know about the health things, right? A heart attack or a stroke or something like that. And all of a sudden, hey, I can't do what it was I was doing. And you got to have that to fall back on and be able to say, hey, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to be able to do what I want to do with no matter what the condition, my mental well-being or my physical well-being or my employer's well-being is. I can still do what I need to do.
That's right. That's right. And with what added to what we do, Joe, which is gold and silver, there's a lot there, and gold and silver for me, Joe, is the ultimate in safety too. So I love what we do also, which is, hey, you put this stuff away because it's very private. It's in your possession. I was watching some guys talking about gold and silver and platinum mining stocks and uranium mining stocks, and then the large line of potential problems with those things. You can a good investment's a good investment, Joe, but you better be careful. It is a gamble. You never know. You may have the best mining stock in the best place with everything lined up, and then suddenly management is corrupt. Something goes wrong,
Right.
and the company takes
Who
a
knows,
nosedive
right?
because it's just a couple of guys.
The government gets overthrown. The power goes out. There's a strike. The mine floods, right? It caves in. There's, my uncle always used to say about mining stock, there's always it's a hole in the ground with a liar standing on top of it, right? Because they always want to tell you, right? Oh, don't worry. Hey, there's this much down there, and we're going to be able to get it all. We're going to be able to produce this much, and it's only going to cost us that much to get it. And then, of course, all of a sudden, earnings seasons comes out, and well, we didn't quite get as much gold or silver as we thought, and well, it ended up costing us a lot more than we thought. And you're like, well, why is my stock performing? There you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife is. I don't watch a lot of television shows, and there's certain shows she likes, and of course she likes those ones with the, they take the hunky looking guy and the beautiful woman. They have like a romance around whatever the situation from the 1700s or whatever, and so she's got me watching. I think this one's called Poldark, and the guy runs a copper mine, and they're showing all the, of course it's one of those shows where it has to have a lot of dramatic effect, and they have. All the bad things that can happen bad to this copper mine is happening during this show. so I'm like, well, I'm glad I just own the physical metals. It's a little easier. It's a little more sure footing, Joe.
Yeah, you don't have to worry pretty much about anything when you do. 800-951-0592. We kind of got a split market. Gold's down $5, silver's up 15 cents. The Dow is down. The 10-year note at 355. And it's kind of funny because tomorrow we're anticipating the Fed funds rate to be between 4.5 and 4 3/4, if not 4 3/4 to 5. And yet we're going to have a 10-year note that, Jason, it's going to be a full basis point plus below the Fed funds rate. And that's just not a healthy thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're pretty sure it's a quarter point. I'm guessing. I don't know. I think I could see
could be
both
a half
cases.
point. You don't know. You're right.
I have no idea, but even it doesn't really matter. I'm starting to see more of a situation, Joe, where I think somewhere end of this year, next year, where I actually see quantitative easing happening with the rates staying high or even going higher. I think and I've even seen some information, Joe, just last night, where they're going to change how they compute the CPI now. They're going to change it. I don't know if you've heard this, but they're going to change how that number is computed, which to me means, Joe, that maybe that CPI comes down with a new they're talking about changing the way they compute it this year, which makes me wonder if they're going to try to make inflation look much lower than it really is, so they can print money, Joe.
Probably what they're going to have to do, because they're not going to get back to, and this isn't the first time. Listen, they've been changing CPI to mislead ever since Greenspan was running the central bank and giving you these artificial numbers that really don't track anything. Last week we kind of made fun. It's the Fed's favorite inflation gauge, the PCE deflator. Well, it doesn't even track inflation. So what's it worth? Nothing. And again, now talking about, well, we probably need to change the way we track CPI. Why? Well, because the CPI number is going to look too high if we don't, right? I mean, that's why. When we come back, we're going to talk food stamps. And the largest egg farm just burned up. 800-951-0592. Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour. The Department of Agriculture over the weekend releasing their food stamp numbers. And Jason, it's shocking because and again, we're going by the data the government gives us. When it comes to employment, we are at historic lows. Matter of fact, I want to say, and I don't have the exact number, but I think it's close to 20 to 25% of states right now have the lowest employment numbers on record. In other words, hey, pretty much everybody who wants a job got a job in this state. And yet, according to the Department of Agriculture, it give you an example of, again, the role that government is playing. And I know, hey, Joe, we don't have people lined up at the soup kitchen. Actually, believe me, if you go to a food bank, they're lined up. Trust me on that. When it's lunchtime or dinner time, they're lined up at the food bank. But you understand, when you picture the Great Depression and these people in line just to try to get a piece of bread and a bowl of soup, the latest numbers going back to 2019, we spent about $60 billion in food stamps for about 35 million people. Today, well, at the end of 2022, and this is just the SNAP program. So this doesn't actually include all the other food assistance program. That number has grown now, Jason. They're saying that in 2022, the number of people that was on food stamps, according to the Department of Agriculture, not quite the all-time record high, but right next to it at almost 42 million people. By the way, the average benefit, and that's really what's even more important. In 2019, they're saying that the average monthly benefit was less than $130, $129 and change. That number now, almost $231. That's a 78% increase in a 3-year period. Now, Jason, I went to public school, but when I do math, right, 78% in 3 years, that's a whole heck of a lot higher than 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 15. Heck, it's higher than 20% a year inflation.
And poverty looks a lot different in 2023 than it did during the Depression. It's different. But one thing about the numbers, Joe, is now we ran these numbers, I think, a couple of weeks ago on a show. I was trying to, I did some estimations. I was looking for some numbers on how many people were in those bread lines back during the Depression. And it really comes out to about 6%, up to maybe 10% would be the high number, depending on which part of the country you're in. Of the country were in these lines getting food that they needed. 43 million, Joe, that's a lot higher than 10%. That's a lot higher than 6%. And something else is they're tacking on some of these EBT cards, or they're tacking on free cash on there too. I remember when I first came on the radio in 2018, we were doing shows on EBT cards and how these guys were going to the local strip clubs and buying cigarettes and booze and tipping ladies and stuff with this money. So it's a dire problem. People do need it because they don't have the money, but they're also just it's a socialistic push towards the government is your mom and dad, trust us only. I mean, look how many people, if told that they were going to get half their benefits cut because of economic stress, and then they say it's because of rich people, or it's because of you didn't vote for the right guy, right, Joe?
Well, the Department of Agriculture defending itself, saying, well, don't worry, payments are going to go down starting in February because of some COVID stuff that was on there. And we're hoping, fingers crossed, you had the COLA adjustment for Social Security. Some people, Jason, it looks like, according to the Department of Agriculture, are going to be in that unfortunate situation where, now you made too much money and they're going to lose the food stamps, right?
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I don't see anything but a situation where these numbers go up. How do they even get the number to go down? If the national debt's going to keep going up, then the amount of people in poverty will just keep going up. There's just it's slavery, and they're enslaving more and more people by every day, every week, every month, every year. It's going to get more severe. So Joe, I wouldn't be surprised if here in the near future we see 50 million on food stamps, because it's just another. We can give another name, right? What is it? The free money they're going to give to everybody, right, Joe? You just stay at home and just get a check sent to you. That's what it's going to amount to. There's going to be more and more people getting it.
And you're seeing a lot of cities and states try this, where they're just randomly giving poorer income people, here's $1,000 a month, and universal basic income is what they're calling it, and really food stamps is a version of universal basic income. And the fact of the matter is, I think 50 million is probably going to understate it before it's all said and done here. This is a growing problem where, and Jason did a great job of correlating to debt. Just look at all the numbers. And as our deficits rise, the number of people on the doles of the government payroll continue to skyrocket, whether that's I work for the government, right? I get benefits from the government, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, rental assistance, this assistance, that assistance. I get a free phone. I get this, I get that, right? All of that correlates, because the higher the debt gets, Jason, the lower the standard of living. And right now we're setting ourselves up. Again, think about it. Last year is going to be the low watermark for the debt for this millennium, for this decade. The low watermark for this decade. So go back from 2020 to 2030, $1.4 trillion in a single year is going to be the low watermark. We were a nation for 200 years without accumulating $1.4 trillion worth of debt. And now that's going to be the low water mark. And the problem is the average debt for the decade, Jason, is going to be well over $2 trillion a year. And the problem is from 2030 to 2040, that's probably going to be 3 or 4 trillion.
I think we hit the 3 to 4 trillion this decade. There are some very specific numbers, Joe, that show that we'll have the 3 trillion this decade. I believe for sure.
When we get back, a processing plant, another one caught fire. This one, the largest egg processor in the country, vaporized. We'll talk about that next. (800-951-0592). Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour. I have some 20s from Friday still left at 21.25. Put those away. We were going to have a silver special, but we had a caller bought it all. Just like that. One call, boom. I'm buying all of it. That's just how it goes. Get it put away. $20 gold pieces, $21.25 at 800-951-0592. And, last year, especially like the first 8 months of the year, it seemed like every week, 1 or 2, sometimes 3 food processing plants just caught fire. I mean, it was nuts, right? I mean, just randomly would catch on fire. And then it kind of died down at the end of the year. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's a trend. Maybe that's when the food processing plants catch fire, is the beginning, the first part of the year, because we didn't make it out of January. Over the weekend, 100 plus firefighters fought a massive fire at one of the largest commercial egg, and it may be the largest commercial egg plant in the entire country. It's in Connecticut, and I'm seeing these pictures of this fire. The firefighters spent hours on the 150-foot by 400-foot chicken coop, where they say 100,000 plus chickens met their untimely demise. They said that they don't know how the fire broke out. Hinnendale Farms, one of the largest suppliers of chicken eggs in the United States. And Jason, looks like it's a complete loss.
It's interesting, all the big buildings and warehouses that are going down over the last year and a half. And, this is just me, Joe. My mind goes to, this next economic crisis could be severe enough, I believe, that insurance companies fall hard. And if you're, let's just say there is a plan in place. There are those that make the decisions. There's a plan in place. One part is that, hey, maybe somebody up the ladder said, hey, the insurance companies are really going to be insolvent during this one. Well, if you have an old building, that you'd rather go get a new building, Joe, and hey, if this thing burns down in a couple of years, you're not going to be able to collect on the thing. You may want to do that earlier. And on top of that, Joe, I just all these buildings burning down, and all the non-creation of getting oil processed, by the Biden administration, really reeks of that they almost want this inflation to stay hot, because if they have a heavy inflation, it stays really hard. I think 5, 6, 7% on their CPI numbers. It's going to be hard for you to lower the interest rates, and maybe you have to raise it, right? And if inflation gets worse at the end of the year, I could see them raising the rates again. Is there a reason, Joe, that the powers that be want to keep those rates higher, or even raise them higher? Is there a reason that they want this inflation to stay here? And part of it, Joe, just feels like this is a big, huge wealth changing hands from the business class, the middle class. They're just losing it all. It's all going upstairs and creating just a poverty class. I mean, look, you just talked, food stamps, numbers growing and growing and growing. It's only 1/6 of the population or something like that is on food stamps. Joe, we could see 2/6 of the population after this next crash on food stamps.
My wife paid $9 for a dozen eggs.
Yep.
Last weekend, $9 for a dozen eggs. And the sad part was the cheapest eggs are like $8. I mean, there's no alternative. But how rare is it? Well, let's look. 2018. Do you know how many food processing plants caught fire? 2.
Say 0. 2.
2019, 1. 2020, 0. 2021, 1. Last year, what was there, like 60? So far this year. This was the 5th one. This is the first one I've heard of. But Jason, according to Bloomberg, this is the 5th processing plant to catch on fire this year.
That's a pace for 60 this year, I guess, huh, Joe? 5 times 12.
I mean, you go, okay, well, the last 4 years combined, right? You had 1, 2, 3, 4 fires in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. That, you average. Okay, I can do that math too. Public school, that's 1 a year on average, 1 a year. And now all of a sudden, we get 60, and now already, right, as Jason pointed out, it looks like we're on pace for 60 again. Something doesn't add up there. That dog doesn't hunt.
Joe, it just feels like it has something to do with insurance and inflation. It just seems like those are the two industries that are really affected with this. Inflation will go up if there's just it's just supply and demand. Inflation can be printing of money, but it can also be less supply. And then, like I said, Joe, there's insurance companies. I don't think, there's some weird stuff going on in insurance. I'm telling you right now. And with the COVID emergency and these buildings burning down in 2022, It's just, it definitely seems to be orchestrated, Joe. There's definitely something more to it. And I'll bet this will be the quietest thing, because there ain't nobody in the mainstream media just talking about these fires. No, nobody, Joe. I don't see, maybe the local news on those local areas, but I don't see anything in the mass media, national or international news, Joe.
Well, hey, if it isn't on the mass media news, it must not have happened. Patriot Radio News Hour, $20 gold, 2125 at 800-951-0592. Final segment coming up. $800-951-0592. Joe and Jason wrapping up this Monday. Tomorrow, the Fed meeting will start. We'll get the answer on the rate hikes on Wednesday. But Jason, there's some people been talking. We've been talking a lot about China. China's reopened, how big and how important. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to find out. China's also reopened its tourism and travel industry already. Jet fuel prices everywhere starting to skyrocket, and it's only going to get worse from here. But to give you the idea of importance, China passed the United States, and when it comes to car exports in 2020, in other words, China was exporting more cars globally than we were in 2020. In 2022, Jason, they passed South Korea and Germany and are now the second largest exporter of cars in the world, behind only Japan. And unfortunately, Japan's on the clock, because I'm looking at the chart here. Japan's export of cars hasn't changed in 3 years. And China's got like the hockey stick thing going. I wouldn't be surprised if by next year, give China another number one ranking, right? They're already the largest gold consumer in the world, the largest oil consumer in the world. Well, they got the biggest auto market in the world. Now they're going to be the largest exporter of automobiles. That's a whole lot different than exporting crappy toys.
A couple of years ago, I looked at those Chinese cars, and you could get a really, they're very cheap cars. I think when I looked at it, I think it was 2019. It was like $5,000, like $5,500 to buy this car, Joe. How do you not become the number one exporter of cars if you can? Here's the thing: I buy Toyota Corollas, and to get a brand new one, I think it's over 20 grand. So let's just say that the inflation that Chinese car is like $7 grand. I can buy 3 of those for a Toyota Corolla, which means if the first one goes dead on me,
like Buicks and others, right? They're building these big mega global car companies. They're building them there and sending them over here. They're sending them all over the world. To Jason's point, their own what I'll call Chinese made and produced. Right? They're at the low end. They're replacing the Kias and the Hyundais. But then a lot of cars you'll be driving, you won't even know. Oh, that's a Cadillac. It's a Buick. It's a Ford. Well, yeah, it may have been made in China.
I don't think it would take too long for the Chinese to just move those into their own brand of cars, Joe. I mean, let's face it, Toyota and Nissan and these Japanese car dealerships have done so well for so long, right, Joe? Why wouldn't China just move it into their own hands, right?
Yeah, that's always the reverse engineering, and these companies, they will make deals with the devil, because in China, hey, here's the rule: you got to turn over everything, all the specs for all the machinery, right? We need to know how it's made so they can reverse engineer it. And again, it's just another one of these things of again that we keep talking about. That's not a state of decline. Right, when you look at stuff like the U.S., that's a state of decline. Hey, we used to be the largest car exporter in the world. Then we're the second. Now we're the fifth. Right now, now we're 10th. Right, that's how it goes. 800-951-0592. The Dow, the S&P, the Nasdaq are all lower. Gold's off 5, silver's up 15. $20 gold. That's the best buy on the table right now. $2,125. Jason and I were coming right back with an interesting half cup. Are we wrong? Maybe. We'll see.